Hello, I'm Rita, aka DuneFoxx, and this is my first video on this YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be unboxing the quarter scale Suguru Geto B-style figure from Freeing. I wasn't planning on doing an unboxing video, but because I haven't seen videos of anyone unboxing this particular figure, I figured I might as well film this video because it might help someone who's still deciding whether they want to pick this up or not. I'm gonna go right in and talk about what you're probably curious about the most, how much this figure costs. This figure is listed with an MSRP of 82,500 yen, which roughly converts to $570 as of making this video. And I got mine from the US Good Smile Company online store for $549 plus tax and shipping, which came out to a total of $673. And I know that seems pricey, but trust me, it could be a lot worse. After doing a quick Google search while editing this video, all the other US sites that have it in stock have it listed anywhere from $800 to almost $1,000 before tax and shipping. So I'm pretty happy with my purchase from Good Smile Company, and look, they give you cute freebies with your purchase. So I actually ended up ordering 2 of these figures, which is a story for another time, but the first one came in December 23rd and I returned that one. The second one came in December 30th, and that's this one right here. This is the part of the unboxing where I realized I probably have to take the figure out of the box off screen because he was just too heavy, and I also forgot to take a video showing the different sides of the box, so I did it after unboxing and I just added the clip here. Sorry for the inconsistent lighting. It was raining when I started filming and it kind of cleared up towards the end. For those of you wondering about shipping and the box he came in, this box is pretty big, as you can see. It's 470 millimeters in depth, 510 millimeters in width, and 630 millimeters in height, and the box weighed around 15 kilos. The figure itself is definitely huge, standing at 500 millimeters or 50 centimeters. So let's do a little bit of fun math. This is a quarter scale figure, which means it is a quarter of Suguru's actual height. That's listed anywhere from 180 to 190 centimeters. And if you divide 190 centimeters by 4, you get 47.5 centimeters or 475 millimeters, which is not that far off considering the actual figure's measurement includes the base and the fact that his hand is higher than his head, so I'd say it is to scale. Compared to other B-style figures from Freeing, this is definitely one of the most expensive ones. I think it's only second to the complete Rengoku figure priced at 270,000 yen, which is insane to me. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm still wondering if this particular figure is actually worth its price tag. Don't get me wrong, it's really nice and I really like it, but I can't say for sure that it's $673 nice. But having said that, there aren't really a lot of options for licensed Suguru Geto scale figures. Emphasis on licensed and scale because there are a bunch of unlicensed figures, mostly the R18 ones, and a lot of different price figures out there. Currently, I think there are only 3 other confirmed licensed scale figures, and only one other is currently out right now. And that's the Kotobukiya Art FX J 1/8 scale figure based on the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 movie. And I actually also have this figure, so if you're interested in seeing an unboxing of that one, let me know in the comments down below. Back to the actual unboxing. The figure is packed really well, as you can see. There are multiple plastic layers and trays to keep all the parts from touching each other. The plastic trays are held securely with tape to keep them from separating and to prevent the pieces from moving around. And you'll see as I'm trying to get the pieces out that even after cutting and removing all the tape, it was pretty hard to separate the plastic trays, which is good because while taking out the black translucent effect parts, even though they felt pretty hefty and solid, they do have a lot of ends that taper off and get pretty thin, and I can imagine those breaking off if you accidentally drop a piece. Moving on, the main figure is one heavy solid piece, and he was packed in the topmost layer. And then there's a middle layer that houses 4 of the black translucent effect parts. Here I am just inspecting them to make sure none are broken. They all seem to be fine, but some have a weird texture in some areas, which I'll talk about later on in the video. And finally, on the bottom layer is another one of those black translucent effect parts and the plastic base. The base is around 355 millimeters in diameter, for all of you who are wondering. I know that when buying a large scale figure, it helps to know how much space it's going to take up, and I am going to emphasize that this figure is pretty big, not just vertically but also horizontally, because of the pose and the effect part surrounding Suguru. The base of the figure is okay, nothing special. It's plain black and I feel like it's a little thin. I would have preferred for it to be solid all the way through, only because the figure itself is really heavy, and when you carry it and move it around, it feels like the base might just snap from the weight. And personally, I would have wanted a solid clear base or even a translucent black one. As I'm putting the main figure on the base, you can see that it's wrapped securely in foam and plastic, especially in between parts that are almost touching each other, like in between his hair and his back, in between layers of clothes, or under the black translucent effect part on his front side, there's tissue paper slotted in between. It took a while for me to remove all of them because I couldn't easily yank it out, especially the one in the hair area. I had to carefully slide it under each strand. After getting those off, I attempted to secure the figure onto the base. There are 2 metal pegs that are supposed to go under each foot, and it was a struggle getting him on because the holes wouldn't align properly. It was at least half an inch off, and this is sort of normal for a lot of plastic figures because you can easily just bend the parts. But in this case, it was scary because it felt like the figure could snap from the sheer force needed to pull the legs into place. The figure is a really solid, heavy piece, so it was extremely hard to bend the plastic, and I had to do it off camera with a lot of effort, but once he was on there, he wasn't budging. All that's left is to add the black translucent effect parts. There are 5 of them, and even though it came with an instruction sheet, I had to pull up official photos of the figure to see how they're supposed to go on. The first piece was straightforward, but it took me an embarrassing amount of time analyzing the instruction sheet and official photos to figure out how to put the second piece on because it had to go under his hair and I couldn't slot it in properly. After fiddling with it for a while with no luck, I thought I had the wrong piece, but after looking at the other pieces, I confirmed that what I had was indeed the right one, and I just kept trying to maneuver it around. I think part of why I was having a hard time with this particular piece is because it was rubbing and dragging against the actual figure, and I was scared of scratching it. Even when I finally secured it in place, I noticed that a tapered part was slightly pushing against Suguru's sleeve. I don't really know how I feel about that, and I'm just hoping it won't scratch and dent the actual figure in the long run. The third piece was also pretty straightforward and fairly easy to put on. It just had 3 holes that needed to be aligned. Now, the fourth piece was slightly challenging to secure. It has an L-shaped peg that goes onto an L-shaped hole on Suguru's back, and it was weirdly loose and tight at the same time. I know that doesn't make sense, but I needed to really fiddle around with it and twist it in. It wasn't aligning properly, but I think it really just needed to be jammed in. Even after I managed to slide it in, it still felt loose and wobbly, so I might go back in and secure it with museum putty eventually. The fifth and last piece was also pretty straightforward, and with that, I'm done assembling the quarter scale Suguru Geto B-style figure from Freeing. This figure surprisingly looks a lot better in person than in photos, and I do have some thoughts and comments that I'm just going to get right into. Suguru's face is done really nicely. I'm very particular when it comes to faces on figures. I would never buy a figure, no matter how nice the sculpt is, if the face looks off to me. And personally, I think his face sculpt here looks better than 99% of the other Suguru Geto figures currently out right now. It's just so detailed, from the dip under his eyes to his mouth to the black gauges on his ears. His hair is also really nice and dynamic, and I just appreciate all the details down to the lines on his fingers. Speaking of details, the patterns on the kesa, which is the apron-like fabric, is extremely intricate, and it may not be that noticeable from afar, but it's the small details like that that add interest. When you look at this figure, he's pretty much just standing there, but because details like how his body twists in a particular way, or how his hair flares out, or the creases and folds on his clothes, plus the way the black translucent effect parts wrap around him, all of those combined give the figure movement and it makes it look dynamic. There are a couple of flaws that I noticed, but this is just me being nitpicky and it doesn't really take away from the figure overall. The first thing I already mentioned earlier, there are some areas in the black translucent effect parts that have a weird texture, almost like bubbling. It's not really noticeable unless you run your fingers over them or get really up close. But if I'm paying almost $700 for a figure, a plastic one no less, I expect it to be smooth as butter. And the second thing is the messy paint job in some areas. I don't really have much to say about this. It's really not that bad. It doesn't ruin the figure in any way, but for how much this figure costs, I just expected better. So do I think this figure is worth it? He's definitely one of the best looking Suguru Geto figures out there right now. I think he looks the most like the character out of all the figures I've seen and own. He's a quarter scale, so he is massive, though I don't necessarily think that justifies the price. In fact, I think he is outrageously overpriced. Bottom line, it was a ridiculous purchase, but do I regret it? No. I think it's a really nice figure and it is a character that I really like. Should you buy it? You really have to like the character to justify the price, but if you have the money and the space, go for it. At the end of the day, collecting is about buying things that make you happy, and this figure definitely does that for me.